But if anything, I've learned a lot along the way. There were a lot of things that I didn't know that I also learned along the way, right? So from that, I think it's a huge upside in going into such kinds of environments that have explosive growth. I saw the same comments being delivered by other people on this site. Glassdoor is that site. So making sure there's consistency across these kind of touch points over here. So really the talent brand comes into play. So that's number one, right? Employees across various organizations bring very different kinds of requirements. Some want stability, right? Just want to be in a role and a capacity for 4 years, 5 years, and then they decide to move on. My forte is seeking out those kinds of skills, that level of talent, and different levels of those kinds of skills as well, from a leadership standpoint, right down to that individual contributor that can make a significant impact.
Hi all, good morning. So today I have Ben with us, who is a talent acquisition professional focused on driving effective recruiting strategies and recruiting process improvements to attract the top talent, which is very important because a lot of talent, good talent specifically, doesn't stay in the market for too long. He is all about making sure that candidates are satisfied with the process. He works with a company that is growing and they're currently acquiring a lot of markets in Europe. Let's welcome Ben on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about what he's learned along the way, how we can make sure that we attract the right candidates to our companies, and what we can learn from him. Hi, Ben. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thank you so much. So, Ben, can you tell us about where you work and what your role is within the company?
Absolutely. So I lead a technical recruiting function for a company that is scaling really well. It's called Trip Actions, backed by some of the largest and prominent venture capital firms out there. And we are looking to sort of make a dent or create a niche within business travel, right? So business travel meets spend management or expense management, which is the fintech part of that portion. Plus, we combine that and marry that with what's called a spend card. It's a credit card. The credit card is called Liquid, right? So if you are a business traveler, for example, you'll go to our portal, you will under one platform, get all your sort of expenses, which is the spend platform. You can leverage the spend card to transact. And so, it sort of brings all three sort of different departments all together, which makes it a big ROI for small to mid-sized businesses that cannot afford big accounting teams, right? Bookkeepers to keep track of every receipt, of every sort of transaction for everybody that's traveling in the company. So we've automated a lot of these processes over here to sort of really narrow it down and say, one-stop shop, let's make your life easy.
Well, I think traveling, especially in business, is hard as itself. So having a process that makes it seamless, makes it much more efficient, just makes things 1,000 times better. So I can definitely see why people who are traveling for business would go for this. So thank you for sharing that, Ben. Would love to understand, Ben, how did you come across this company? Was it through a friend? What was your experience like getting into Trip Actions?
Of course, it's the power of the network. It's having relationships across various sort of networks as well. I was pinged by an ex-colleague from Google. And I used to work there about 10, 11 years back. It's been a while. But just having and creating, such networks is what sort of brought each other a greater awareness of what we can bring to the table. I was approached by this colleague or former colleague who said, hey, I have a golden opportunity in helping scale a company that really requires a lot of work. Are you up for the challenge of putting in, a fair share of work to sort of build a strong foundation, build a good brand at the end of the day, and helping us scale? And I love challenges like that. So it was a no-brainer for me to say, absolutely. One, it's a trusted source, right? And having vetted the company with solid backers, if you will, look at the founders as well with a great track record. So all of these components had to come into play to help me make my decision. And at some point I said, absolutely, I'm all in. Let's get to work.
Okay. And do you regret your decision? Are you very happy?
Never. I don't regret anything. But if anything, I've learned a lot along the way. There were a lot of things that I didn't know that I also learned along the way, right? So from that, I think it's a huge upside in going into such kinds of environments that have explosive growth. right? The
Okay.
question for you is, do you have the right mindset to take on the volume of work? The pace is so, you're on a rocket ship, right? Are you that person at the end of the day who can, go at that speed? Can you operate at that speed? It's not designed for everybody at the end of the day, right? So it's really a very personal sort of decision over here. But at the end of the day, like I said, no regrets. If anything, a lot of good learnings along the way.
Okay, I like that you took it in a positive way
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people usually, if they go into fast-paced environment, they will get overwhelmed and they'll be
right,
like, "Okay, no, this isn't for me."
right.
So I think having a good mindset, making sure that you're open-minded
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
yeah.
and taking every challenge as a learning momentum, like you did, will take you further. And here you are working with a company that you're very passionate about, which we can see through your speaking. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ben. Ben, so you're all about specifically recruitment, making sure that the process is seamless. Can you tell us about how you attract the top best talent these days? Because every company is hiring these days. Everyone's after the best talent. So how do you make sure you attract the right talent and the good talent, which is a technical fit for your
Of
company, but
course.
also a
So,
cultural
and that's
fit?
a loaded question, by the way, because there are a lot of touch points that make this entire ecosystem to come together, right? There's no one
Yeah.
playbook per se that gets to the end results over here. So you've got to deploy strategies
Mhm.
across, the talent brand, right? So you think about Glassdoor, for example. How do you really sort of capitalize your opportunities on Glassdoor to build reputation management? Right? Because a lot of people are cross-referencing. So what I am selling to you today has to be spoken about, has to reside somewhere across the internet so that people cross-reference and go, Ben's being very honest with me. I saw the same comments being delivered by other people on this site. Glassdoor is that site. So making sure there's consistency across these kind of touch points over here. So really the talent brand comes into play. So that's number one, right? Then it's really understanding, if we're trying to build a world-class product, how do we narrow down to finding folks that have been there and done that, that have had this similar experience with the base, with an ever-changing culture, dynamics, and where change is really the mainstay and the focus, right? Because as you know, employees across various organizations bring very different kinds of requirements. Some want stability, right? Just want to be in a role in a capacity for 4 years, 5 years, and then they decide to move on. Here, it's more about the I'd say the mindset of building a product that is quickly tweaking and changing, finding market fit, and then saying, how do you relate? How do you stack up against that new requirement? Do you have what it takes to sort of tweak, to pivot, and build further out without sort of taking yourself out of consideration, right? Because it can be very challenging at that point. So finding people that have the, I'd say, growth mindset, that have built products that understand fundamentally what an ecosystem like this brings. Marrying the two is what's instrumental in my job of finding those kinds of folks to help us build out further. Now, we do take chances on folks that have been in a very comfortable environment where change is, well, not as pronounced as my organization, but are willing to step into this. But before they even get in and across the fence over here, we make it a point to identify behaviors, right? What sort of behaviors do they exude? What sort of questions do we ask them that draw out a sense of how this person operates, how they think, what's important, their philosophy, their day-to-day sort of expectations of themselves, of the organization, of their leadership. So all of this have to be vetted up front to see whether does it make sense for us to sort of come together, to absorb them as an employee, and then offer the platform for them to sort of scale their careers onto.
Okay, no, I think you touched upon a lot of important points. I think specifically word of mouth, especially because I
Yeah,
think the power of social media, people will post reviews everywhere. And I mean, one bad review will count much more
exactly.
than 100 good reviews just because they'll be like,
Right.
oh, as in, like, I think it's human nature just to go
Exactly.
for towards the negative side. So thank you so much for sharing how elaborative your whole process is, how holistic it is, and how you focus on the technical skills as well as the behavioral skills. Because at the end of the day, you want someone who has the right mindset for your company because they will be adding value to it. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ben. Last question, Ben. So your company is actively acquiring a lot of businesses in Europe. It made its third acquisition in Europe recently, as I saw in the news. So my question is, your company must be hiring. What kind of roles are you currently most actively hiring for? Which is the top priority?
There are two sides of the fence over here. On the technical side, obviously, we're always looking for engineers, right? And these are engineers that maybe have been within the travel industry. So they've worked with companies like Expedia, Travelocity, and some of the larger brands like that really understand what it is to go live with a certain product or product line. So we're always, my forte is seeking out those kinds of skills, that level of talent, and different levels of those kinds of skills as well, from a leadership standpoint, right down to that individual contributor that can make a significant impact to the bottom line, right? So I'm vetting for that range or that spectrum. Then there is the other part of it, which is the non-technical side, and that's more business development, sales, marketing. There's a legal component over there. How do we come together as a company? Because now, as you pointed out, right, there's a lot of acquisition taking place, but that's hunky dory. If you got the acquisitions, you have to integrate. You got to bring your systems and you got to bring my systems together to speak to each other, to be fully functional, right? To be more effective. So then we need engineers or certain professionals that know integration engineering on how to bring different sort of, types of companies together and then launch to be, operate in a higher capacity. So I'm always in the lookout of folks that have those kinds of skills, that kind of background, have a success story to share with me about what worked, what didn't work, especially what sort of challenges could we run into while we're on this tear of acquiring companies, not just in Europe. Europe is just here and now. We're actually focusing now on scaling in India, in Gurgaon. And so building a presence out there in India means attracting the right people, the right stakeholders to scale the Asia or Asia Pac market. So there is those kinds of both conversations and talent hunting, if you will, that come into play, right?
Okay, wow. I love it. I think especially integration, I mean, you can't bring in a brand that focuses on fast food and healthy food together if they don't get along well. That would be weird. So I think especially when it comes to mergers or even acquisitions specifically, you need to make sure that all the pieces of the business fit together like a jigsaw, because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's the maximum output that's going to make a difference in the company as opposed to a single
exactly.
component. So
Yeah,
thank you, Ben, for sharing that. But other than that, Ben, our time is up. It was an absolute pleasure learning about your wonderful company, how well it's doing, how well it's scaling up, and with leaders like you who are looking to make sure that the best talent is part of their company. Thank you so much.
fantastic. Thank you for this time. Yeah, take
Of
care.
course.